Welcome to Mystery Sauce. Today's story, we will delve into the story of the Grimes sisters, who vanished after watching an Elvis Presley movie. But before I dive in, please don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. At the end of the story, I invite you to stay as I delve deeper into a professional psychological analysis of the themes that will emerge from the lives of Patricia and Barbara Grimes. Also, I ask for your understanding regarding my accent. Some words may be more challenging for me to pronounce, and you'll definitely hear some of them. So, let's begin. The 1950s marked the emergence of rock and roll music, with artists such as Chuck Berry, Little Richard, Fats Dominoes, and Bill Haley in his comments dominating the music scene. However, the era was truly defined by a young singer with crazy hairstyle and a boyish charm. Now, he hailed from Tupelo, Mississippi. This individually known as the King of Rock and Roll, or simply the King, was none other than Elvis Presley. He has been recognized as a musical genius and one of the most pivotal cultural figures of the 20th century. Now bear with me, I'm giving you a breakdown of where this leads to. His debut single, That's Alright, launched in 1954, quickly earned Presley his first gold record, and then following this release, his fame skyrocketed. He turned everything he released into success, hitting the charts 16 times within the next 2 years, including 4 chart toppers in the early part of 1956 alone. Elvis's fans were notoriously passionate. His allure combined with a confident demeanor and his signature hip movements, I can't replicate, enthralled a whole generation of young women. His live performances were overwhelmed by the loud cheer of his adoring fans, making them unforgettable events. And in the latter part of 1956, Elvis made his movie debut with a role in the western Love Me Tender, portraying Clint Reno, a singing cowboy from the Confederacy entangled in the romantic dilemma. The film's theme music, performed by Presley, quickly climbed to the top of the charts, and as theaters filled up night after night, predominantly with teenage girls who, to the dismay of their more traditional parents, often watched the movie multiple times. Now, among these ardent fans were the Grimes sisters, Patricia, age 12, and Barbara, who was 15 years old, from the southwest side of Chicago, Illinois. They were captivated by then the 21-year-old singer, having ventured into the city to watch their idol and Love Me Tender on about 10 occasions, unable to quench that thirst for his passion. Now, when they found out the film would be playing at the more local Brighton Theater at 4223 South Archer Avenue, the girls were over the moon. And on opening night, December 28th, 1956, they planned to see the movie again, hoping to squeeze in 2 viewings before curfew. They wanted to make the best of their Christmas and see the flick as many times as possible before going back to the drudgery of work and school. So Patricia's 13th birthday was just 3 days away, and they could not think of a better way to celebrate. That morning was a typical one in the Grimes home. Barbara gets up at around 8 a.m. to go to her part-time job in the mailroom of Wolf Furniture House at 4211 Archer Avenue. Now, Patricia, they called her Petey by her friends and family. She gets up a little later. The girls who had always been close were excited for that evening festivities. And before Barbara left for work, they made a date to meet for lunch at a local dining store. Now, speaking about Barbara's last day of work, the office manager of Wolf later told the Chicago Tribune, "She's quiet. Oh, as usual. Barbara seldom spoke unless spoken to. You would hardly know Barbara was around. She was so quiet." Ms. Plozek, an office manager of the business, described Barbara as a timid, nervous girl who was afraid to meet and talk with strangers. "We tried to let her work in the general office, accepting payments, but she was too shy," she explained. Now, after the girls met for lunch, Barbara headed back to work and Patricia went home to do chores. When she finished her house cleaning, Patricia went for a milkshake with her brothers, Jimmy and Joseph. She then dropped into the candy store to buy comic books with a girlfriend. Now, Patricia was home at around 4:30 p.m. and Barbara came home from work around 6 p.m. Both girls had dinner with the family. Now, Laura Grimes, the family monarch, the mother, was not so sure a trip to the movies was a good idea. It was a chilly night, Barbara had been feeling a little ill, and she was still getting over a cough. Life was tough for Loretta. She was a divorcee. She has 5 kids at home. As well as taking care of a household, she worked as a part-time clerk. What little she earned from her job supplemented the $35 per week in child support she was receiving from her ex-husband, who was a truck driver named Joseph Grimes. The two sisters begged for permission to go to the movies and eventually wore Loretta down. Too tired to argue them, she gave them $2.50 each to spend on the movies and bus fare. It was cheap back then. Patricia and Barbara left their home at 3634 South Damien Avenue in Southwest Chicago's McKinley Park neighborhood at around 7:15 p.m. They walked a couple of blocks to the bus stop where they called the number 62 bus. After that, it was a straight drive to the theater. A friend spotted the sisters buying popcorn at 9:30 p.m. Between showings of Love Me Tender, their pal 15-year-old Dorothy Winner was sitting next to Barbara and Patricia. She last saw the girls when she left the theater at 10:15 p.m. to make it home before her curfew. The sisters were still there when she left, waiting to savor every last minute of their idol. The girls did not arrive home at 11:45 as promised. And at midnight, there was still no signs of Patricia and Barbara. Loretta sent her son Joey, 14, and his older sister, 17-year-old Teresa, to the bus stop to wait for the pair. Teresa and Joey returned home after 3 buses passed with no signs of their sisters. So Loretta called the police at 12:30 a.m. to report the girls missing. She telephones again at 2 a.m. Now because the sisters were still not home and she was worried sick. Patrolling police officers received a description of the missing girls and began to watch out for them. And over the next few days, the search for Patricia and Barbara ramped up. As there was still no sign of them, hundreds of police officers were tasked with interviewing people and scouring downtown Chicago looking for the girls. Searches of abandoned properties and wooded areas yielded no new information. Chicagoans looked for the girls in backyards, dumpsters, diligently following the story in the news. Joseph Grimes was devastated by the disappearance of his daughters and pleaded with his truck-driving co-workers to help search for them, begging them to keep an eye out as they went about their business. Barbara was last seen wearing a yellow blouse, a gray tweeted skirt, and black shoes with white bobby socks. And over that outfit, she wore a dark knee-length coat with a gray scarf. Patricia was wearing blue jeans that came down to her shins, with a yellow sweater and black shoes with white socks. She wore a white scarf on her head, and her black jacket had white stripes on the sleeves. Now, a local bank teller, Roger Menard, 19 years old, came forward to offer some information on the case. He said he had been at the late screening of Love Me Tender and was sitting behind the Grimes sisters. They were still sitting there when he left the theater, and he noticed them behind as he walked northeast along Archer Avenue. Roger said that while the Grimes sisters were behind him, he looked back and saw that a late model green Buick had stopped beside the girls and that they had chatted with the occupants of the car briefly before the car drove on. And at some point, the girls passed them, and Menard witnessed another car pulling up beside them. Again, they chatted with what appeared to be 2 teenage boys inside. The girls walked on toward their bus stop and giggled as the cars pulled away. Others, including the bus driver himself, claimed the girls boarded an eastbound bus. And after the second showing of the movie lit out, they got off the bus at Western Avenue at 11:05 p.m. Halfway into their usual bus ride home, no one knows why they left the bus so far away from the regular stop. Then you have Oral Zastro and Ed Lauren, another pair of teenage boys. They claimed they had passed the Grimes sister at 11:30 p.m. Now at the corner of 35th Street and Sealy Avenue, just 2 blocks from their turn onto South Damien Avenue, the young men who recognized the girls said they appeared to be playing in doorways, jumping out and scaring each other as they walked. No more than 5 minutes stroll from home. They had plenty of time to make their 11:45 p.m. curfew. What had happened to them in the last 1,600 feet of their walk home? We don't know. So for the next week, there were several unconfirmed sightings of Barbara and Patricia Grimes. People claimed they had seen the girls walking all along the streets of Chicago, eating at local diners, listening to music in a record store, and traveling on transit buses and trains out of Chicago. 2 weeks after their disappearance, the mother of a friend of Patricia swore up and down that she had received a hang-up call from the younger Grimes girls. And police started to wonder if the girls had run away. One bit of ridiculous gossip about the girls was that they were seen getting into a fancy dark car with a man who looked like Elvis. The more sensible rumor mill speculated that the girls had run away to meet Elvis. Police also endured pranksters, calling in false tips. Since each tip had to be taken seriously and cleared, this took a lot of valuable police resources away from the real search. The thought that Patricia and Barbara had run away got more traction when on January 17th, 1957, a woman from Nashville, nearly 1,500 kilometers away, claimed she had seen the girls in that city and even helped them find an employment agency. The clerk at the agency had the sisters from their photos, confirming the woman's tale. But no one else in Nashville made any claims that they had seen the Grimes girls. By January 18, 1957, police had interviewed 10,000 people in the double disappearance. Yet they felt no closer to finding Patricia and Barbara than they had at the start of the investigation. Police wondered if someone was holding them against their will. Their parents continued hoping against hope that their daughters would be found alive. Elvis himself got involved in the case on January 19th. While making a gospel album for RCA Records at Radio Recorders in Hollywood, California, Elvis learned of the two missing fans. Patricia and Barbara's fan club cards had arrived in the mail after they had vanished. And urged by police and moved by the story, Elvis took to the airways, on television and radio, and made a plea to the Grimes sisters to please go home. An article in the January 20th edition of the Times of Hammond, Indiana, quoted Elvis as saying, "If you are good Presley fans, you'll go home and ease your mother's worries." At around 1 p.m. on Tuesday, January 22nd, 1957, Leonard Prescott of Hinsdale, Illinois, was headed east on German Church Road to pick up a few things for his family when he saw something odd just off the road. Now, it looked like two mannequins, like the ones he was used to seeing in department stores' windows. Now, Prescott continued on his way, but the scene kept nagging him. So after dropping off his groceries, he returned with his wife to the location, which is about 200 feet east of County Line Road. When they got out of the car for a closer look, they immediately realized the forms beside the roads were two bodies. The couple hopped back into their car and drove to the sheriff's department office. The police arrived at the scene at around 1:35 p.m. The area had been under deep snow until recently. When the weather warmed and the snow melted away, the bodies were exposed. It appeared the girls had been there for several days. Both of their frozen bodies were nude and were located just inside the guardrail and down a slightly incline, only a few feet off the shoulder of the busy country road. It looked like someone had hastily dumped the bodies there and they drove off. The press got wind of the discovery, as did other looky-loos who swarmed the site, parking their cars along the shoulder and milling around trying to get a peek at the bodies. Now, frustrated detectives had canvas tarps put over the bodies to preserve their dignity. I mean, they're only 12 and 15 years old, so show some respect. The girls were lying in a T shape in the tall brown grass, and the coroner's office investigator Harry Gloss told the Chicago Tribune that Patricia had 3 puncture wounds in her chest, perhaps from an ice pick. Barbara, whose head lay underneath her sister's torso, had marks and bruises on her face that may have been from a beating. Her nose was broken. Reporters were all too happy to snap pictures of a distraught Joseph Grimes as police brought him to the site to identify his daughters. And after his grim task, a reporter took a photo of the anguished father as he made his way back to a waiting police car. He was so weak from the grief. 2 burly cops had to walk on either side of him, holding him up. Like vultures descending on a fresh kill, reporters were present at 3634 South Damien Avenue, as Loretta Grimes heard the news from police that her 2 little girls were dead. The front page of the Chicago Tribune on January 23rd and 57 displayed a photo of the heartbroken woman sitting in her living room as a young friend of the girls consoled her. Comparisons were made early on to the unsolved murders of 3 Chicago boys only 50 months earlier: Robert Peterson, 14, John Schuessler, 13, and his brother Anton Schuessler, who was 12. Went missing and were later found murdered and nude near the Des Plaines River on October 18, 1955. Their clothes were never found, and Patricia's Barbara clothing had disappeared as well. There was controversy around the cause of the death of both girls. The bodies were to undergo autopsies on January 23rd, but required thawing out before an examination could be completed. Remnants of their final meals and the popcorn in their stomachs indicated the sisters had died on the night they disappeared. These findings discounted all the apparent sightings of them after they had gone missing. Now, the pathologist on the case, Cook County Coroner Walter McCarran, listed the cause of the death of both girls as murder, with shock and exposure as secondary contributors, but only because he could not pin down how they actually died. Now, his findings did not address Barbara's broken nose and bruises, nor were the apparent ice pick wounds on Patricia's chest considered significant. He believed that post-mortem rodent infestation had created these injuries. Harry Glows, the chief investigator of the Cook County Coroner's Office, told reporters later that the autopsy had found semen inside Patricia's body. He revealed that there had been milk in Barbara's stomach, but she had not had milk with her last meal at home. Harry also believed that evidence of a thin veneer of ice on the bodies proved the girls had been alive until January 7th, more than a week after they had disappeared. These findings contradicted the popcorn present in the girl's stomach. Glows felt the murderer was sophisticated and intelligent and had somehow known how to hide what he had done. Had the killer fed the sisters popcorn a week later to throw the whole timeline of their deaths into question? Possibility. Leave it in the comments if you think so. Now, Coroner McCarran was livid that Gloss had made these revelations public and fired him for his insubordination and damaged the integrity of his investigation. In Chicago, parents told their teenage girls they could not set foot outside alone, even during the day. Police had hoped to solve the case quickly, but that's not what happened. One of the early suspects was Walter Kranz, a 53-year-old self-proclaimed psychic and steam fitter. He had phoned the tip line while drunk at a local tavern on January 15, 1957. He said that a vision told him the girls were in a Santa Fe park. Police had written him off as a crank after questioning him. But when the bodies were discovered, they were only a mile and a half from Santa Fe Park. 2 lie detectors given to Krantz were inconclusive, and police later released them without charge. 2 days after the bodies turned up, so they're another suspect. A 21-year-old drifter named Edward Lee Bedwell, who had an Elvis-like hairdo and sideburns. He came to investigators' attention after someone claimed to have seen him with the girls in a restaurant on December 30th, 2 days after they had disappeared. After some intense questioning, he confessed, and police charged him with the murders. He later recanted his confession, but the DA proceeded anyway. And later, a coroner's inquest determined that he had fabricated his confession, which did not match the evidence. And it was believed the Cook County Sheriff's Office might have bullied him into it, holding him for 3 days in a motel room before he signed a typewritten confession, despite the fact he could not read or write. And over the years, multiple people have confessed to the crime, but there has not been a conviction yet. Bedwell was the only man ever charged. One young man the police looked into was 17-year-old Max Fleeg. He confessed during a polygraph exam to kidnapping and murdering the Grimes sisters. Why do people do these things? Since he was a juvenile, however, his polygraph was deemed illegal and he was released. He later murdered another young woman and was caught and convicted in that case. And on December 28, 1962, marking the 6th anniversary of the Grimes sisters vanishing, a 40-year-old missionist from California, Alfred Smith, Lawless, suddenly confessed to the killings. His confession came unexpectedly as he was detained by the police for driving under the influence. A report in the Rock Island Argus dated December 29, 1962 revealed that Lawless declared, "On this day 6 years ago, I was responsible for the deaths of Barbara and Patricia Grimes, and I've been fleeing from that reality ever since. The image of those girls haunt me constantly. My thoughts are consumed by the guilt of how I abandoned them, bare and lifeless in the snow, hidden in the forest. I've been on the run for years. I felt a compulsion to confess to someone. However, Alfred's confession began to unravel upon further interrogation, as he lacked the intimate knowledge of the crime that would be expected of the actual perpetrator. The investigation eventually stalled, and in the years that followed, heartless individuals would occasionally contact Loretta Grimes, claiming responsibility for her daughter's death. One such call to Loretta raised suspicions of authenticity when the caller mentioned a unique physical characteristic of one of the girl's feet, a detail now widely known. This individual contacted Loretta again 3 years later, following the murder of another local girl, yet remained identified. Ray Johnson, a retired detective from the West Chicago Police Department, has dedicated efforts to keep the case in public view, contributing to documentaries and managing a Facebook group with 1,800 members aimed at solving this enduring mystery. Despite these efforts, the tragic murder of Patricia and Barbara Grimes remains an unsolved case. So, that concludes today's story. I want to extend a heartfelt thank you for joining me on this journey through this dark story. Now, again, for those intrigued by the psychological layers, I invite you to stay as I delve deeper in my own professional opinion for a professional analysis of the themes that have emerged from the lives of Patricia and Barbara Grimes. I'm going to explore a psychological profile. It reflects upon the adolescent quest for identity, the impacts of societal influences, and the profound effects of trauma. This review is grounded in my professional opinion, aiming to provide insights into the complex interplay of factors that shape our development and how we navigate the world around us. So, if you want to stick around, I encourage you. If today's true crime has captured your interest and you're keen to join me for more stories that blend intrigue with psychological exploration, then please, your support would mean a lot to me. So hit the like and subscribe button, hit the comments, tell me if there's any other stories I should work on, or if you have any opinions on the podcast so far. So thank you. So today we delved into a story that touches the very core of human development, the shaping of identity, and the profound effects of tragedy on our communities. Now we explore the lives of Patricia and Barbara, two young sisters in their early teens, a time of psychological blossoming and vulnerability. This tale is not just about them, but about the universal journey of adolescence, a phase marked by the quest for self and the deep influence of social environments. Now imagine being in the whirlwind of adolescence, where every song on the radio, every movie star on the big TV feels like a message directly to you, shaping who you are. For Patricia and Barbara, Elvis was more than just a singer. He was a symbol of the identity they were forging. Their passion for Love Me Tender was not just about the music, but about belonging, about being part of something larger than themselves. This is the essence of adolescence, exploring various roles, interests, and icons to carve out a unique sense of self. But their story takes us further into the realm of social influence and group behavior. It shows us how, in our tender teenage years, we are deeply influenced by our peers and the culture around us. The sisters' intimism for Elvis and their immersion in fan culture exemplify this drive for acceptance and belonging. It's a vivid demonstration of how young people often form strong emotional attachment to celebrities and cultural movements. They seek validation through shared experiences. And tragically, the disappearance and ultimately untimely loss of the Grimes sisters bring us to confront the impact of trauma on families and entire communities. Their story is a stark reminder of the complex grief that ensues when the normal process of mourning is compounded by the trauma, ambiguity, and the relentless gaze of public attention. The collective effort in the search, the widespread media coverage, all of it intensified the communal sense of loss. It knitted together a tapestry of shared sorrow and collective grief. Furthermore, this story sheds light on the psychological vulnerability of adolescents, their eagerness to engage with their interests, coupled with the underdeveloped awareness of potential risks. It mirrors the invisibility so often felt in youth. This vulnerability that's magnified by societal failures to protect and educate. It underscores the critical need for awareness and dialogue about the dangers facing our young generation. So, that concludes everything for us today. If you join me for that, I appreciate it, and thank you. Thank you for joining me, and please hit that like and subscribe button, comment. Please help the algorithm notice the channel. Until our next episode, keep it saucy.